Today I've got even smarter steps for making a vent adapter, so let's get cracking. Alright, so real quickly, if you missed this project last week, it was pretty fantastic, but I've got a few things that I've made even smarter. The highlights of it were it was super simple using Sketch Revolve, and we've got an awesome fillet that makes the part even stronger. If you want to see that full lesson, this is a quick link to it. You can also find it in the cards. I'm going to back out to the Tinkercad desktop. I don't want to wreck this one, so I'm going to click on the gear and I'm going to hit duplicate. When you hit duplicate, it opens, and let me show you my errors on the first design. Alright, so real quick, this turned out awesome, super sturdy, but here's the issue. 4 inches is the outside of this. Before you ever start a project, make sure you measure so you've got the right numbers. Just for reference, got my caliper, set it to 0. I'm going to stick with inches to start this project because this is a 4-inch vent adapter. As you can see, 3.7 is going to be a good number of inches for the inside of it. Just for giggles, I am going to switch to millimeters because I'm going to show you how to do that in Tinkercad as well. So in Tinkercad, anywhere around 95, 96 is going to be good for the inside of that. So let me show you how easy this is to fix. First, I'm going to ungroup the holes, and I'm going to flat out delete the holes. I've even got a smarter strategy for doing that. Now we can take this shape and we can double click on it, and remember how easy it was. It was simply an L shape that we nudged into place, and then we drew a cute little Bezier curve to give us the fillet. Now, because that pipe was measured in inches, so I simply swapped the settings to inches so we could easily see a 2-inch radius, which gives us our 4-inch diameter pipe. Now, the problem is I am using a stroke width of 0.124. And when I print in layers of millimeters, I really have no clue how much 0.124 is on a 3D print. So check this out. I'm going to just hit Finish Sketch. We had the idea of the project, and we're going to bounce back from that idea to the metric that everybody uses when they're 3D printing. Of course, a massive shout out to CDP189 for nudging me back to millimeters in the comments. Now when I double click and open the project, now we can see the measurements, and right here you can see that I'm past 50 millimeters. That's more than 100, and it's why my project did not fit out there. So I'm going to just make a couple of adjustments here. First, if we hit stroke settings, this was 3.1 millimeters thick. That made it so crazy sturdy, way more than I need. I'm going to make it 1.5. That is a more traditional amount of thickness I would use for a project like this. Now I'm going to click on this and I'm going to bring it down to 0, set my snap grid to 0.1, and just use the down arrow until it hits that edge. And remember when we looked at the millimeters, that was something like 96 millimeters. Well, to do that, I'm just going to nudge this to the left. This would be taking away 1 millimeter, so now we're at 98. This one would be taking away 2 millimeters, so we're at 96. And then I can also take this and move it 1 more millimeter so that it's sloped for easy access. The last thing I want to do is change the height of this. I'm going to just use the arrow key and the shift nudge to move this down. I only need this to be about 3 centimeters high. That's going to be plenty for what I'm trying to do. And then finally we can double click to end at that part, and I can move this part over into place so I still get my awesome fillet. So a few things we've done here. A, we measured. B, because we're using millimeters, I know how big the line thickness is going to be. And if you want to stay with 1.2 and 1.8, that's real easy to switch to. You would just type in your numbers and bang, adjust it. When I hit Finish Sketch, there is our brand new part with the awesome fillet. And I promised a slick way to add the holes. If we type in array, A-R-R-A-Y, bingo. There is a circular array. We're going to make circles. We want them to be holes. We only want 4 of them. And then I'm going to set the size to be 4 millimeters because that matches the screws I have. Real quickly, I'm going to grab this part and do L for a line. I want it to be centered and centered. Check it out. When we switch to just that shape, we can walk it to the right area by just changing the radius. If I make that 60 and give it a moment to snap, that's pretty cool. I'm going to try 65. And that's absolutely perfect. Select the two and do Control G to group. Of course, union groups are a little bit more complex, especially with these sweet curved shapes, so it does take a moment. But bang, there is our project, perfectly aligned and ready to print. How cool is that? All right, before we export this for 3D printing, let me show you something else really quick. If you double click, you can edit it. While you're in editing, you can double click and edit your sketch. So we're right back where we were. Say I want to make sure I have a little extra leeway on this. I can double click on it, click on that whole line, and I'm going to quickly nudge this in a single millimeter. Now I can double click to finish, click on my fillet, and bring it along as well. It is that easy to adjust your sketches on the fly. Of course, when you're done, finish sketch and then click outside to wrap it up. Because we were editing, it automatically cuts the holes in as well. How cool is that? Let's quickly send it for 3D printing. I'm going to choose Export, STL, and in my 3D modeling folder, I'm going to call this V3 because, of course, it took me more than one try to get it exactly how I wanted. Now we can bounce to Bamboo Lab Studios, create a brand new project. Let's add that file. There's my V3 vent. I'm going to stay with the Army PLA Tough. I've also got the 0.2 strength settings. If we hit slice plate, our old one used to be 2 hours, and this one is down to 1 hour and 16. How cool is that? Print plate, check our colors, and let's send it for 3D printing. All right, so we're back. This is the new part. This is the old part. Obviously way beefier. Both are plenty sturdy. And the moment of truth. Bang. How cool is that? So the moral of the story, friends, is A, always measure first, and B, even if you're really happy with the design, you can always rethink it and come up with better ideas. I also want to thank Bob for the slope idea that makes it easier to slide on, and ZDP 189 for nudging me back to millimeters. As I wrap up, I do want to say thank you to everybody that supports me via YouTube memberships. Don't forget there are 3 different levels of support starting as low as $5 a month. With any level of support, you get early access to videos. Also, make sure you keep an eye out for those members-only posts. Also, a massive shout out to everybody that supports me via Patreon. The group has passed 300 members. It has a fantastic messaging area where you can ask questions, post designs, gain skills. Of course, you can learn more with the bit.ly up above or the link in the description. Finally, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget every time you like, hype, share a video, add a comment down below, or hit subscribe, you're helping HLModTech get just a little bit bigger, which absolutely makes my day. Friends, have a glorious day, and keep tinkering.